Welcome to the Asylum. And now, your hosts, Rick Fleeger and Rick Briggs.
Woo, back in the saddle after an extended holiday break. It's the Asylum Fantasy Sports Show here on the Full-Time Fantasy Network. Check out this and countless other great fantasy and NFL content over at fulltimefantasy.com. At Fulltime Fantasy on the tweeters, and of course you can follow us, AsylumFantasySports.com, at Asylum Football on Twitter, and if you want to be part of the show, AsylumFootball@gmail.com. Rick, many a week has passed, but I still bask in the glory of yet another, not one, Rick, not two, Rick, but 3 times the Caveman Fantasy Football League champion. Did it with popsicle sticks and duct tape this time, brother, but I got her done. So I'm going to sit back and let you congratulate me. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you again. All right, you're too much. Your turn, Rick. Come on.
They already said it. So, I mean, there's just really nothing that I can say to actually enhance what you just had, other than maybe.
We're waiting.
I don't know. It won't work.
Oh, here we go. Fat finger in the button. Starting off 2020 the way we left off 2019.
Dead as always.
All right, so now you got to do your homework. You've got to put together a strong draft, make the right moves throughout the year. But here I am. I'm going to stand up and say, if you go out and argue that the fantasy playoffs are anything but the intersection of preparation and flat-out dumb luck, let me tell you the roster that ran through the playoffs for my team, Felt Street, in the Caveman Fantasy Football League, as I got ravaged by injuries the last 2 or 3 weeks of the season, as so many other people did. So this lineup, folks, went out and won a fantasy title. Drew Brees, good. Christian McCaffrey, good. Something called a Patrick Laird. Danny Amendola. Golden Tate, Brashard Perryman, Zach Ertz, Tyrell Williams, and Ronald Jones are what took down a fantasy championship. Here's the point. You still got to work that waiver wire. You still got to do it. If you're running around on the tweeters thumping your chest that you know everything. And did you notice, Rick, I did want to bring this up. I've been sitting on this for about 3 weeks. Did you notice that apparently the Twitter rate of championships is 103%?
Yeah, no doubt.
Everybody
and
won.
they win multiple titles
7 out
every
of
year.
8. I was in 8 leagues. I won 7 of them. The other one, the commissioner cheated and put somebody else in after the fact.
Here I had 4 injuries and took down third or whatever, you know. And
that reminds me of, I saw some anniversary several years back of the Immaculate Reception. I don't know what one it was. And I think it was the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette or CBS Radio. Somebody went out and did a survey of X amount of people who were at the Immaculate Reception.
Okay.
And they figured out the responses they got. There was approximately 102,000 people in Three Rivers Stadium that day, and I believe it held 58,000.
Right.
So I think this is a little bit of that, but I feel fortunate. Boy, luck boxed my way into one. And Rick,
I'll tell you,
your playoff? Oh, sorry, never mind.
well, I got to one more time. Here is a lineup that did not make the playoffs.
Make the playoffs, right.
Russell Wilson at quarterback.
He's pretty good, I've heard.
Saquon Barkley at running back.
I've heard of that guy.
Marlon Mack at running back.
He's pretty good at football.
Devontae Adams, wide receiver. Tyreek Hill, wide receiver. Michael Thomas, wide receiver. Greg Olsen for a tight end. Joe Mixon as a flex. No playoffs.
Zippy playoffs for Rick.
Boy, I tell you what, though, the bodies were flying in the consolation bracket, though.
Yeah, you would have walked through the playoffs. I warned you not to look. So, hey, we're going to keep this quick. The fantasy season's over. I don't like to start looking too far ahead to the 2020 season until the 2019 season is actually over. So I think, Rick, we're just going to talk some games, talk the news going on. This is just going to be free form, have a little fun, and keep it short. So, coming out of that divisional round, Rick, last week, some interesting games. I don't think there was any good games, really. Some interesting, some fun to watch, some things I've never seen.
Yeah, Packers-Seahawks was okay. The other 3 were, the biggest implosion I've seen since Frank Reich brought the Bills back. quite frankly. And the 49ers the Vikings had no answers to anything San Francisco did. And I fault the offense a lot for Minnesota offensive coordinators because it was like, we are going to run Dalvin Cook.
Right.
And I get that you want to try to establish the run, but he had like 25 carries or not 25 carries, but he had like 25 touches for like about 30-some total yards. And, they couldn't get the run game going. They couldn't get any sort of Kirk Cousins was really pedestrian. Wasn't bad, but just nothing great. And they just didn't look like they had anything clicking at all offensively. And they couldn't adjust to anything.
No, and I think so much of that when everybody's healthy, and I don't think until now, and maybe even still, they get enough credit for it. That defensive front of the San Francisco 49ers, I sit here now hoping to see Kansas City and their offense go up against that defense of the San Francisco 49ers. See, Kirk Cousins, I think he took a step forward this year. He won a playoff game. I think he finally won a primetime game several weeks back. I think he is the guy for that team. But his one major flaw to me, and it's, people who pay attention to these things more closely could probably point out 37 other flaws. But the one that's glaring to me is he's a little slow in his reads. He tends to stand up in that pocket. We know he's certainly in no way mobile. He can create nothing outside of the, but he can't even roll the pocket. And so when you get a front and things like Bosa and Ford were doing, there was nothing he could do. So I can get force-feeding Dalvin Cook because Kirk Cousins has no opportunity to get the ball to his other playmakers. Whether or not it's his fault, which I think a lot of it is, or the scheme, there's just no opportunity there. And as such, you got to get the ball quickly into Dalvin Cook's hands, and I think that's what San Francisco wanted them to do, right? So
I over-exaggerate a little bit, but looking at Dalvin Cook's stats, he had exactly 6 and 9, 15 touches for a total of 24 yards. Talk about taking the playmaker out of the game.
Yeah, and that's what they have to do. And then Tennessee, Baltimore. Derrick Henry, man, wow. Just what he's done the last 7 or 8 weeks. This isn't just the 2 games in the playoffs.
Oh, no.
Look back at what he's done back since Thanksgiving and even beyond that. And he gets on these stretches. Wasn't there a stretch like this last year where he's clicking off 180?
Well, just towards the end of the year, because I was on him full bore last year in the preseason. Well, I was about 3/4 of a year too early for him.
And it seems to be it started earlier this year. But, man, I can't remember in recent history, somebody going out there. And he looks like Earl Campbell at the line of scrimmage, and he looks like Barry Sanders once he breaks the line of scrimmage. And it is so cool to watch as a guy who, how I feel about the analytics in the air show and all of this is kind of, I guess I'm an old school guy in that regard. Watching a team win a divisional playoff game on the road where their quarterback completes 7 passes for less than 100 yards and not only win but essentially dominate this game. That was wild and cool to watch.
Oh, it really was. And it made it as a boring game, but just watching the dominance over arguably the best team in football at the time. Obviously,
I don't even think it was arguable.
You can throw San Francisco into
maybe
argument and so forth, but it was just total domination, and it was fun to watch.
Am I a caveman who doesn't find it boring when a running back gets on a roll like Derrick Henry, just to know he's going to hit that line of scrimmage, and at any given time he's gone for 60? I love it. I love watching that.
Oh, I do too.
You look at the other side, so
let's be honest about it. I mean, Derrick Henry led the league in rushing, and so it's not like it should be a surprise as far as that goes. But it was just, I don't know, like you said. I mean, some of the games were just very pedestrian, and then all of a sudden, wow.
Yeah.
It was just like total dominant. Well, okay, here we go. I'll pull him up here. He had one 100-yard game from week 1 to week 9.
Yeah.
He had one 100-yard. No, he had some 90, 84, 82,
Right.
reasonable yardage that you would expect. But that after the bye week in week 11, he had starting in week 10, 188. Then after the bye, 159, 149, 103. They had 86 against Houston, and just faded away. I'm not sure what he had against New Orleans in that 38-28 game, but I know it was
upwards
it was
of
up there.
170,
Yeah,
180.
exactly.
There was a 200-yard game in there somewhere. It's just amazing. And this is 2 years in a row, he gets on these runs late in the year. So I think that does bear asking without looking too forward to 2020. Also with the full acknowledgement that he's an unrestricted free agent going into this offseason, and we don't know where he's going to be. What do you do on draft day, Rick, August 2020? Where's Derrick Henry slotting in for you in terms of running backs? I don't care about the route.
Well, yeah, I know. Okay, he's still behind McCaffrey.
Certainly.
Still behind Barkley.
Yeah.
Still behind Elliott.
Kamara.
Yeah, he's behind Kamara, and I dare say I put him behind Chubb still.
Maybe. I'll be curious to see what that offense looks like with the new head coach there.
Dalvin Cook. If he's everything stays basically the same in Minnesota and he's healthy, that's right about where I'm going to put him. Probably 6, 7, something like that.
I think that's pretty much where he was going into this year, save for a couple of guys. David Johnson, maybe James Conner.
Mixon was probably over him.
Yeah, Mixon.
Maybe even Fournette
was.
in a lot of
now,
places.
An argument could be made for Fournette in that list, and we'll spend a lot more time of that as the summer goes on, is he became, I think the one thing, I got two problems with Derrick Henry. This is assuming he's back in Tennessee, he's got the new contract, everything's healthy. I don't know that. He might end, who knows where he ends up, and that'll make all the difference. It takes him a while to get going. You almost have to wonder, if you look at it the way that's happened the last 2 seasons, you almost have to wonder if that's by design, right? We're going to protect him. We're going to ease him into it. And when it's crunch time, we're going to take the reins off and, hey, y'all, watch this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And because that's what's happened. I don't know that. Yeah, you just wonder that. But so you're giving up that first part of the season, number one. Number two, he's still not a PPR factor whatsoever. Whereas Leonard Fournette, out of nowhere, if we'll put together in upcoming shows, like I want to do a show, Rick, our biggest surprises of 2019.
Right.
That's going to be towards the top of them. What Leonard Fournette did in the passing game and from a PPR standpoint, that's something that's not part of Derrick Henry's game. I don't expect it to be that going forward. So I think it does slide him down a little bit. But I'll tell you what, if I know starting week 10 every year that my running back 2 is going to start averaging $180 and 2 touches a game, I'll go ahead and reach a round or two early for that if I have to.
Yeah, just, going on the Leonard Fournette thing, he was 5th in running back receptions in the league, and he was behind Tariq Cohen, who, by the way, only had 200 yards rushing during the season, where Fournette was over 1,100 yards rushing. So I mean, you throw Cohen out of there. I mean, he's right there with Kamara, Austin Eckler, and Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah, and you didn't see that coming, right?
Right.
We knew Eckler would be involved in the passing game. Obviously Kamara, obviously McCaffrey. Leonard Fournette would not have been on that list in the preseason. So, and that's something Derrick Henry's lacking. So, looking at the other side of that game, Baltimore. A lot of what's the narrative? Did Baltimore choke? Did Lamar Jackson choke? Did Lamar Jackson stink? Is Lamar Jackson still the greatest ever? I've never seen an overreaction to one playoff loss at this level in a long time.
And it's not like we've never seen the number 1 seed going into the playoff and get knocked off.
Right.
It happens every year, basically.
Feels like it.
Yeah, I mean, that's an over-exaggeration, I'm sure. But if you go back and look in each conference. How many times we've had 1-1 in the Super Bowl? So somewhere along the line, they're getting knocked off, right?
Yeah.
So there's coachings involved.
Right.
There's momentum's involved. Look, you got a second-year quarterback. You had a Hulk running the football.
Yeah.
They didn't have an answer for him. Like we were talking about, Minnesota had no answers to the run game, really, of San Francisco.
Right.
Of course, it was multiple running backs instead of just Bruce Banner that turned green and ran over everybody. They just didn't have any answer for it. Lamar Jackson accounted, we were talking this before we went on the air, accounted for over 500 yards of offense.
Right.
I mean, when you're the only tool in the toolbox is doing anything, it's tough really to get clicking. And yes, if you want to logically look at it, you can say Lamar Jackson lost that game.
Early on, yeah.
But the defense didn't help him out.
No, that's exactly it.
And Lamar Jackson is the type of guy, I think, that's going to take a game like this. And I tell you what, if they kind of stay together next year, watch out.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, they're a Super Bowl favorite because that kid's going to learn. He's one of the most positive guys I've seen.
Yeah, look, Lamar Jackson made, a couple critical errors in terms of especially the interception early, right, and had 3 turnovers total. But I think his biggest mistake is he wasn't able to tackle Derrick Henry, apparently. I mean, let's not forget how this game went and how poor. And that's fine. He's a young kid. You got, this Tennessee team feels like that 2005 Steelers team, right? Now what this Tennessee do is much more impressive than even what those Steelers did. I mean, those Steelers go into Cincinnati and win. It's the Bengals. The big one was in Indianapolis.
It was 11-5 or 12-4 that year.
They were going to F it up. That's what the Bengals do. It's just a matter of when.
The Colts.
The Colts is the big one, right, at the height of Peyton Manning's powers, and the idiot kicker pushing it left after Jerome Bettis tried to give it away. And then you go into Denver and beat Jake Plummer. That isn't what what the Tennessee Titans. You go into Foxborough and unseat probably the greatest dynasty we've seen in forever, and then you go into Baltimore and take out what that juggernaut has been. We'll see what happens going into Arrowhead this week. So you've got those factors. He come out, he made a couple of mistakes, which he hadn't made all year. He had no help. Mark Ingram was really banged up. You saw that. He wasn't himself. Right. They established no run game outside of Lamar Jackson whatsoever, and you just ran into somebody who got on a roll. If the analytics people hate, I've been learning this looking at Twitter, hate talking about momentum. They don't want to hear about that. Momentum's a real deal. That's why the Tennessee Titans are playing in the AFC Championship.
Well, in a real similar fashion, only exponentially more exaggerated. The exact same thing happened to Kansas City.
Right.
But what happened? Their defense regrouped, rallied, and basically shut Houston down the rest of the game. Yeah, they got a couple of, another touchdown, or I guess it was, because 51-31. I mean, they were up 24-0 or whatever it was. So, I mean, they gave up one more touchdown, but it was inconsequential. And the whole Kansas City offense, they started off basically the same. Bad drop by Kelsey, that really could have been a killer. Tyreek Hill bumbled that punt that gave them another score. But they rallied, and Pat Mahomes got everything going. And maybe Lamar's not quite as elevated, I don't know how to put it, experience-wise, even though they're basically, they're both 2-year guys, right?
Right, yeah.
But
2-year starters.
Exactly. But, Mahomes just seems a little more mature. And he didn't get down. He didn't make any bad mistakes. But then again, the rest of the offense picked it up.
Right. No,
while the defense shut them down.
Yeah.
And nothing happened like that on Baltimore.
I mean, the Lamar Jackson thing is so infuriating to I guess it's the social media world, the Twitter world we live in right now, where we have to talk in absolutes. Whatever happened today was the only and the greatest thing that ever happened.
Well, yeah.
Immediately, halfway through this game, anybody who said, boy, Lamar Jackson struggling, Lamar Jackson killed his team there, you're racist, you're stupid, still the tweets, you're not bad for a running back, people are still angry about that. I don't know why Lamar Jackson is such a lightning rod he's not the first guy who came out of a spread quarterback run first offense in college who, certain teams and experts and other folks said, might be better in a different position. I don't think this is sustainable in the NFL. Because guess what? It still may not be. The year Lamar Jackson had this year, by the numbers, is kind of unheard of. But in a relative sense, this has happened before.
Sure.
And it's been, few the guy who sustained it over a long period of time. You look at, Johnny Manziel, it never worked for him coming in. Remember the year, was it 2012? Colin Kaepernick came out and did very similar things. Got to the Super Bowl, lost, and we all know how that ended after that. And take all the political stuff out of it, he got beat out by Blaine Gabbert.
Right.
I'm not saying I don't think Lamar Jackson's going to be that. I think what he possesses in the pocket is better than those other guys. But with a guy like that, why that doesn't always last in the NFL is when you take away the threat of also a 100-yard rusher at some point in his career. Now that makes him just a really good passer, which there's a lot of really good passers in this league, so it's not, this juggernaut. I keep using that word every year. But you're not allowed to say that. It's either you have to be an absolute. Either he stinks, C, he lost one game in the playoffs, he never should have been a quarterback, Joe Flacco should be starting there, or how dare you point out the fact that he threw 2 interceptions and the Baltimore Ravens lost. He's the greatest quarterback that ever played, so frankly, you're a racist. I mean, I don't understand it. I almost can't take it. It drives me insane. Can't we just say, man, that was a hell of a year. Good Lord, look what that kid did.
Yeah.
You can't say.
And they had a bad game, and they came up short. But take it, learn, and move on.
You know who had a bad game and came up short is your boy Bill O'Brien. Have you ever seen
that wasn't a
like
bad
that?
game for Bill O'Brien. That is just stupidity.
I never advocate for someone to be fired after one game. I think we're too quick to do that, kind of coming off what I just talked about. If I owned the Houston Texans, I might think about it right there.
We would have certainly had Mr. O'Brien in the office the next morning. And, of course, our personalities probably wouldn't be the greatest things to start the meeting in, because I would basically start, what the hell were you doing? would be the question.
And look, I almost have to say, blowing a 24-0 lead in 3 quarters to Pat Mahomes and that offense is bad, but isn't awful. To give up 51 after that, to go up 24-0 and the rest of the way 51-7. What the hell are you doing? What did you do at halftime? Good
I think the worst thing is, Rick, is they were up 24-0 in the second quarter, and they were losing at halftime. That's what really. I mean, how do you? Call a timeout. Stop. I mean, use them all if you have to.
Something.
I mean, that is just ridiculous. I mean, and if you can't focus your team and calm them down somehow, at least just to, if they'd have lost a game, so be it. But to lose a lead at halftime, and you knew going off the field, they were done.
Well, no, I think I knew, and this isn't revisionist history. I mean this. When it went 24-14, even before that fumble, then you really knew. At 24-14,
I told my son, game over. I did.
City. No, I didn't think it ended up being a blowout the other way.
No.
Certainly, but no. At 24-14, Kansas City just won that game, and then they fumbled the ensuing kickoff, and then there was absolutely no doubt. Look, I have no problem up 21-0, 4th and inches kicking that field goal. You're up 21. You got a chance to get points. Why take chances? I got no problem with that. That fake punt, I'm sorry, that's fireable to me. It really is. What are you gaining with that? That is insane. You've got all the momentum, pin them back. Now, of course, we saw Pat Mahomes could go 90 like every other team can go 3. So, but I think that just started that ball rolling.
Yeah.
And it kept going, and it kept going. And I've never seen anything like it.
I agree. And, you know, we just keep expanding on, like, the Lamar Jackson thing. And another on Twitter I saw where defensive coordinator Wade Phillips is a possible defensive coordinator candidate for the Browns.
Right.
He was, you know. And already the tweets come out, no, he's terrible and all that. He's been one of the best defensive coordinators for the last quarter century.
Yeah.
And this expert, obviously knows he's terrible.
Well, he doesn't use the right graphs and stuff that you're supposed to use.
Unbelievable.
Hey, rest of the way before we move on to the last game, rest of their careers, you were starting you bought a franchise, Rick, in the NFL.
I would love to.
They did a ridiculous expansion draft similar to what the NHL does, where you can essentially pluck anybody off of anybody's team.
Right.
Who's your first overall pick to start your franchise, Patrick Mahomes or Lamar Jackson? I'm going to limit it to those two.
Mahomes.
I think it's not even close.
No, I
really
think,
do.
yeah, I do. It is him. And it is not a knock on Lamar Jackson.
No.
I mean, that's like saying, whatever, go back, Joe Montana or Terry Bradshaw. I'd take either one of them.
Right.
But, it's.
I just really think it's the sustainability of it for Lamar Jackson is what I wonder about. Let's even take out that he is so much better than anyone who's ever done this, and nobody's ever done it the way he did. But anybody in that mold, that pro defenses will never figure it out, which is what you're supposed to believe now, right? So I won't even try to argue with that. Like I said earlier, at some point in his career, running that much, running that fast, being that shifty as he gets older isn't going to be an option. Whereas Pat Mahomes can stand back there and with a flick of the wrist throw it 85 drop it on a dime. I think he's a guy.
And he knows there's something about him. He knows exactly where everybody is on that football field, and he knows if he should run, if he should pitch it sideways, if he goes across field, if he goes downfield, straight down the sideline. Somehow he knows that better than almost anybody that I can think of.
You know who he reminds me of? This is going to be a really strange comparison, but bear with me for a minute. Is John Stockton. All right, John Stockton.
Okay.
I swear, his entire career is he still the career leader in assists in the NBA? If he's not, he was at the time.
Right.
I swear to God, he never threw a pass where he was looking, and you always wondered how did he see that. Pat Mahomes is that way.
Exactly.
How many passes does he throw? Literally, they made a big deal out of it last year and earlier this year where he's deliberately looking off. But it feels like as a defense, you can't get a read on this kid.
Right.
That ball's coming out. And
you can't read his eyes.
It comes out at any angle, and he's never looking where he throws. And I swear you go back and you can't find where he looked the first time and anticipate it.
Right.
It's something else. The kid's got an IQ for the game. And a fearlessness, I think that's a big part of it, too. And I think Lamar Jackson has that as well. They share that. But a fearlessness. But he's just got, to your point, a feel for the game. You can't read his eyes. You can't get to him. Amazing.
And that's hard to defend.
Yeah.
It's amazingly difficult to defend something like that. And yeah, if you're starting a franchise, that's my guy, no doubt.
And so the last game ended up being the most closely contested game, but I found it kind of boring. Seattle at Green Bay. I was hoping they were talking all that snow, and then it didn't snow during the game. That was kind of a bummer.
Yeah, it was, and it was an interesting game, but they're trying to say that the game was decided on that first down call.
I thought the spot was right.
Look, it's getting to the point everybody says it's a game of inches. It was a game of inches back in the 40s.
Right.
When guys were just looking at it.
Yeah.
And We
just didn't act like it was a national tragedy if half the country thought the ball was 2 inches too far in one direction or the other.
Well, yeah, and the guys going down, I mean, you saw him going down. I mean, it was difficult to tell.
Right.
So, I mean, unless you have overwhelming evidence to overturn the call, which is the rule, correct? Yeah, but it'll go on forever.
Do you have any belief that in a 4th and 1 inch scenario, Green Bay wasn't going to pick that up anyhow? You want to avoid that situation, Seattle? How about this? With your star quarterback, your all-pro quarterback, your 2 great wide receivers, and Marshawn Lynch, why don't we score a touchdown in the first half? Let's try that. And then if that doesn't work, you had Green Bay on that drive at the end of the game, and I know it's not the Legion of Boom anymore, but it's still supposed to be a good defense. You had them in 3rd and long twice. How about not giving up first downs where the spot wasn't an issue? How about you stop that? Well, you want to get down and worry about where Jimmy Graham's head hit versus where the ball and an inch here or an inch there, and you weren't going to stop him anyhow. Aaron Jones would have split the line. He'd have probably taken it to the house at that point.
I agree.
That would
whine all you want,
I
fans.
get on the refs, and deservedly so, but that call did not decide that game whatsoever.
Nope.
Not in any way.
I agree.
So, Rick, we're gearing up here. Championship week coming up. We've got Green Bay headed out to San Francisco. How do you see that one going?
I'll tell you what. I wish I knew. I'm concerned about – I was actually concerned about Green Bay's run defense going into the Seattle game, and it wasn't that big of a deal.
Right.
Obviously. I'll have to go along. I like San Francisco. Obviously, I think Aaron Rodgers is better than Garoppolo, but I think combine that defense with a multitude of running backs and what Garoppolo can do and has been doing, just enough. I mean, 131 yards, 1 touchdown. It's kind of like Tannehill type thing. You can't stop that San Francisco run.
Right.
They do that, then Green Bay certainly has the upper hand, the driver's seat.
Yeah.
But you have to stop all these runners, and I don't know if they can. So I'm going San Francisco.
Yeah, this one's tough. The 49ers got a lot working against them. Number one, I'm starting to believe the 2019 season is being orchestrated by State Farm, and we're on a collision course with Aaron Rodgers and Pat Mahomes.
Yeah.
So you got that going.
It's also the 2 teams in the very first Super Bowl.
Right, in the 100th season.
In the 100th season, right.
Those things tend to work. I'm actually swayed by that. I am in no way saying the league, would orchestrate that. But doesn't it just seem like in sports, in all sports, things like that tend to work out a little bit? So that's kind of my first thought. Plus, I think I'm an idiot.
Well, you're right. One of the few things you are right about.
There we go. We can finally agree on something here. Green Bay has won 14 games now this season, and I still feel unimpressed by them. It's been kind of the quietest 13-3 season plus a playoff win in my lifetime that I can remember. I don't know why. I don't know what it is that they haven't moved the needle for me whatsoever. So I kind of discount them. I kind of take them lightly. What San Francisco is doing is impressive, right? You talked about the running game and how many different guys they can bring at you in the different skill sets. The difference maker George Kittle really is.
Right.
What Debo has done all of a sudden, he's become uncoverable. And, if you want to take everything away from Debo, you got a guy named Emmanuel Sanders. Not sure if you ever heard of him. He's going out there making plays. That defensive front, it's so impressive, and the way they get after the quarterback. I think San Francisco is the better football team, and I guess the way they finished, San Francisco technically was the better football team. San Francisco thrashed Green Bay, a couple of months ago.
All right.
I'm going to be stupid here, and I'm going to say, based on the State Farm, the serendipity of the State Farm thing, Super Bowl I in the 100th anniversary, and I'm going to throw everything else out, which I know you shouldn't do, and this is Jimmy Garoppolo versus Aaron Rodgers. I don't think I even believe it in my heart, but I'm going to take the Green Bay Packers
and
I
don't blame you.
To win this game based on factors completely off the field, because by the analytics, by the information on the field, San Francisco should win this game easily, like they did earlier in the season when they played this very game. I just got a vibe.
But this isn't the same Green Bay Packers that they thrashed whatever week it was. Starting to see the old Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams connection again.
Right.
Aaron Jones is a threat every time he has the football. I mean, he has like 1 million touchdowns, it seems like.
No, at least. Averages 7 or 8 a game, I think.
Yeah. But, and it's Aaron Rodgers. So, I mean, would I be surprised if Green Bay wins? No. I mean, I think this should be one of the better games. I think this is going to be the best game, obviously. There's only 2, but and I'm going San Francisco, trying to be logical about it.
Yeah,
but I tell you what, Green Bay, it wouldn't surprise me a bit. 2 13-3 teams, well, whatever they are, 14-3 now. So I mean, who cares?
Yeah, that's the logical pick. It just feels like it's lining up. And all right, then let's go over to the other side, Rick. You got the upstart Tennessee Titans heading into Arrowhead, taking on Kansas City.
I have to go Kansas City.
Yeah.
Look, I think the glass slipper's about to crack. I mean, look, Derrick Henry had been nothing but remarkable. But when Kansas City gets going, you can't just run the football.
Right.
If they happen to fall down 14-0 or something like that, now you can't just or say 17-0. You'd say in the second quarter or something like that. Now you really are forcing their hand. And as great a year as Ryan Tannehill's had, you get in a shootout with Pat Mahomes and that offense, you're going to lose.
Now, that said, Tennessee did that. They got in a shootout at home against Kansas City a few weeks ago.
True.
And won.
But that's not that was a surprise.
Yeah,
That's not going to surprise Kansas City.
Yeah.
Now, look, Andy Reid, he's standing there with his jacket zipped up and his walrus mustache hanging over his mouth. I mean, there's a lot going on in that head. They're not going to surprise him anymore.
No. And that's just it. I think, that's kind of the simple thing. Honestly, Derrick Henry could rush for 240 yards, and this team could lose by 3 scores.
Yeah.
That's first thing. And what I look at, what I saw coming out of last week, both with Kansas City, and I almost throw out anything you do against Houston because that franchise and Bill O'Brien's a donkey is kind of what I've decided. But let's look at Tennessee and what Mike Vrabel and his staff put together to take away Lamar Jackson, right? They kind of defended everything inside, forced it to the side. They did a really smart defensive game plan that was executed well. I sit down and try to think of what's the game plan for the Kansas City Chiefs. What are you going to do? You know what I mean?
Right.
Again, we talked about Pat Mahomes. He can make a play with his back to the line of scrimmage. He's going to get his. And I think, you look for that letdown, the young quarterback, like Lamar Jackson, like Pat Mahomes last year, like the first quarter on yesterday, on Sunday, and then he found it. And here we go. And now he's feeling it. Now he's the guy. I'd love to see Tennessee. I'd like Tennessee, San Francisco would be cool, right? It would look like about Super Bowl IX, where there's going to be 200 rushes, in the Super Bowl. It'll be over by 9:30, and you can get to bed at a reasonable hour or get back out for another 12-pack after the game ends. You don't have to miss anything. I just don't see how they do it. I don't see a scenario where the Kansas City Chiefs, Pat Mahomes, don't score 30 points. And I know, Tannehill has the ability. We saw it in that game versus them. He had a nice run at the end of the year, but their identity right now in the playoffs so much is revolved around Derrick Henry. I don't know if you can flip that switch back to that. I think the Chiefs win it. I hope it's a good game. I think this one has a little bit of blowout potential in it, but And I'll get the Super Bowl I rematch, I guess.
Yeah, exactly, which would be interesting.
Yeah.
Which would really be interesting.
You get 2 weeks of Hank Stram, which is fun. Matriculating the ball down the field.
Vince Lombardi, what the hell are we doing out there?
Yeah, I don't mind watching those, so we'll get a couple weeks of that.
Yeah, I mean, that would be great with his little, Vince Lombardi with his little Russian hat on from the Ice Bowl there, and, Hank Stram. I mean, that's just pure gold.
I'll watch that. All right, you got anything else?
Not a thing.
Look, real quick, since we're picking games.
Yes.
Who you got tonight? National Championship.
LSU, baby.
Clemson.
I have had LSU since September. So, I mean, I got to stick with them.
This is probably the most I have anticipated watching a national championship game, at least since this format started. Maybe going back to Vince Young, Mark Sanchez. Maybe it's because they made us wait 7 weeks between the between the semifinals and this. This one is so intriguing. Joe Burrow is just on a rocket ship up. That offense completely unstoppable by anybody thus far. This LSU team has beat, 7 teams, I believe, that were in the top 10 at the time they played them. I think they should win, but I'm a Clemson lean here, and here's why. What happened in that semifinal game with Trevor Lawrence, got down, came back, that's fine. They're both good football teams. Trevor Lawrence, only a sophomore, but he's been there. He's played in this game. He's won this game. With Clemson, you've got an almost entirely NFL defense. The problem with LSU this year, I don't even think it's a problem. It's still a good defense. It's not that dominant LSU defense we're used to seeing. Maybe it's because they're on the field so much because Joe Burrow scores in 3 plays every time he touches the freaking ball. So I grant you, but you have that defense. But this game's going to be close, and you're going to get in the fourth quarter. And what Trevor Lawrence did on that last drive, he looked like a guy that been there before, done that, completely nonplussed by the whole scenario, just systematically plucked that ball down the field. I'm rooting for LSU. I hope LSU wins. I've always had a thing for LSU. I don't know why. I don't know if it's just the stadium's cool. I don't know what it is. I've got no ties to Louisiana whatsoever. But I just think Clemson been there, done that. I'm going to take Clemson in a last play of the game kind of scenario. I hope I'm wrong, but I think that's where I'm leaning. Trevor Lawrence, man, kid's got ice water. You just think he's coming back to college again next year. He may leave college without losing a game.
What is the line? I forgot to ask you.
You know what? I don't even remember what it is. It's been moving around a good bit. Let's take a quick gander here. I'm sure I have it right at the top of the screen. If the equipment didn't work so slowly, we have got, come on, load, baby, load. Load, baby, load. We've got LSU laying 5. Oh, I'll take that 5 with Clemson every day.
Oh, boy, that makes it extremely difficult.
5 sounds like a lot. That's got to be a field goal game, doesn't it?
Boy, it sure sounds it to me.
Yeah, I'm definitely, if we're picking the line, it's Clemson.
And I just pulled up 52% betting is taking LSU minus the 5.
Wow.
As opposed to 48% taking the 5 with Clemson. Boy, I'll tell you what, that is tough.
That's a brutal line there.
Yeah, I may have to cover my bases like we do with picking.
Yeah,
I'm going LSU to win, Clemson to cover.
There you go. I like it. I hope it goes that way. I want it to be.
I think it's going to be a great game.
Yeah,
I mean,
can't wait.
It's obviously the 2 best teams in football.
So I'll tell you what, if we're so excited, why don't we shut this crap down and go watch it?
Let's go.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us this week. We will be back next week here on Full Time Fantasy Network. Check everything over there at fulltimefantasy.com, at Fulltime Fantasy on Twitter.
And check Twitter for some upcoming news.
Yes, big news here at the Asylum, at Asylum Football on Twitter. And to send us congratulations, asylumfootball@gmail.com. Enjoy the game tonight. Enjoy the games this weekend. We'll be back from Radio Row at the Super Bowl next week. Until then, we'll see you.
Take care.